Ladies and gentlemen, there's something almost sacred about the morning ritual of coffee. The slow pour, the rising steam, that first sip that seems to whisper to your mind, "Wake up, it's time to begin again." For most of us, it's just a comforting habit, a small pleasure in the blur of daily life. But what if I told you that, after the age of 60, that same cup could hold the power to protect your most precious possession, your memory? Now, before you think this is just another feel-good myth or clickbait headline, let me assure you, what I'm about to share is grounded in rigorous neuroscience, human biology, and real clinical observations. Over decades of studying how food and brain chemistry interact, one truth has become crystal clear: the human brain is not meant to fade as we age. It is meant to adapt, to grow, to rewire, and even to regenerate. But that only happens when we give it the right signals. And coffee, or more precisely, the right kind of coffee consumed in the right way, sends one of the most powerful signals of all. Let me take you back to a patient I met years ago. Her name was Maria. She was 64, a retired teacher, and a lifelong lover of morning coffee. When she came to my clinic, she was frightened. Her father had suffered from Alzheimer's, and lately she'd been forgetting words mid-sentence. Sometimes she'd enter a room and pause, uncertain of why she was there. She feared the same slow unraveling was beginning for her. She said, "Doctor, I just don't feel like me anymore." We ran the tests: blood work, brain scans, cognitive assessments. And yes, there were early signs of decline. But what struck me wasn't just her results, it was her habits. She told me she'd stopped drinking coffee a few years back because she'd read online that caffeine was bad for older adults. She replaced it with herbal teas and avoided anything stimulating. But in doing so, she had unknowingly silenced one of the brain's strongest natural allies. You see, coffee, in its purest, unprocessed form, is not just caffeine. It's a complex symphony of over 1,000 bioactive compounds, many of which have extraordinary effects on brain health. Chief among them are polyphenols, antioxidants that can cross the blood-brain barrier and activate something called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF. Think of BDNF as fertilizer for your neurons. It helps your brain cells grow new connections, strengthens existing ones, and protects against the slow decay of memory networks. Now, here's the fascinating part. It's not just drinking coffee that matters. It's how and when you drink it. Studies from neuroscience labs in Finland, Japan, and the United States all point to the same surprising truth. When consumed after your first meal, not first thing on an empty stomach, coffee can dramatically enhance blood flow to the hippocampus, the memory center of your brain. On the other hand, when taken immediately after waking, it can spike cortisol, your stress hormone, leading to energy crashes and mental fog later in the day. That's the trick most people miss: the timing. Maria had been skipping breakfast and drinking her coffee at dawn. I asked her to change one small thing: eat a light, protein-rich breakfast first, then enjoy her coffee about an hour later. Within 6 weeks, she returned to my office with tears in her eyes. Her memory lapses had decreased, her focus had sharpened, and as she put it, "I feel like myself again." Now, of course, one story doesn't prove a theory. So let's turn to the science. In a long-term study from the University of Kuopio in Finland, one that followed over 400 adults for more than 2 decades, researchers found that those who drank 2 to 3 cups of coffee per day in midlife had a 65% lower risk of developing dementia and Alzheimer's disease later on. But what's remarkable is that this protective effect wasn't just from caffeine. The same benefit wasn't seen in tea drinkers, even though tea also contains caffeine. The key difference was in those coffee polyphenols, especially chlorogenic acids, compounds that improve insulin sensitivity, reduce inflammation in the brain, and support the delicate endothelial cells lining your cerebral blood vessels. Our brains are greedy organs. They consume 20% of our body's energy even when we're at rest. But as we age, The small capillaries that feed those neurons can stiffen and narrow. The result: less oxygen, less glucose, and slower neural firing. The coffee trick. That is, properly timed coffee with certain nutrient synergies reopens those microchannels, restoring the brain's circulation and sparking dormant regions back to life. Another patient, a retired architect named David, was 71 when he came to me. He'd been experiencing what he called senior moments, forgetting appointments, losing track of tasks. His MRI showed minor vascular changes, not disease, but sluggish blood flow. I recommended a simple adjustment: black coffee, 1 hour after breakfast, paired with a small piece of dark chocolate, 80% cacao or higher. The combination may sound indulgent, but here's what happens biochemically. Cocoa flavonols and coffee polyphenols together increase nitric oxide production, relaxing the arteries and improving oxygen delivery to the brain. Within 2 months, David's cognitive test scores improved by nearly 20%. His wife told me, half jokingly, he finally remembers to take out the trash again. But let's not oversimplify this to coffee equals memory. It's not magic. It's physiology. Coffee works because it engages multiple brain systems at once. Caffeine temporarily blocks adenosine receptors, preventing the buildup of fatigue signals. Meanwhile, polyphenols reduce neuroinflammation, the silent, smoldering process behind so much cognitive aging. And when you pair coffee with healthy fats, say a small amount of omega-3 rich foods like walnuts or avocado, it enhances absorption of those antioxidants into the brain's lipid membranes, where they stabilize neurons and prevent oxidative stress. There's a poetic symmetry to it, isn't there? The same ritual that wakes up your body in the morning also has the power to wake up your mind, not just for hours, but for years. Now, let's talk about something deeply personal: the emotional side of memory loss. Because when people fear losing their memory, what they're really afraid of is losing themselves. They fear forgetting the laughter of their children, the names of their friends, the stories that made them who they are. Memory isn't data storage. It's identity storage. So, when we talk about preserving memory, we're talking about preserving humanity itself. There's a beautiful term in neuroscience called synaptic plasticity. It refers to the brain's ability to strengthen or weaken connections between neurons depending on how often they're used. Every time you recall a memory, learn something new, or feel deep emotion, you are literally reshaping your brain's wiring. What's thrilling is that coffee, again, when used strategically, enhances this plasticity. It boosts dopamine and norepinephrine, neurotransmitters that heighten attention and encode experiences more vividly. So that story your grandchild tells you, that song that moves you, that new skill you try to learn, all of it sinks deeper, becomes more enduring, more you. Now, I know what some of you may be thinking, but doctor, I've heard too much coffee can raise blood pressure or cause jitters. And that's true. For some people, yes, caffeine sensitivity is real. But here's what the data shows: moderate consumption, 2 to 3 cups daily, has consistently been linked not to harm, but to benefit. Reduced risk of Parkinson's, lower incidence of type 2 diabetes, and even improved mood stability. It's not about quantity, it's about precision. The dose, the timing, the companion foods, they all matter. One study out of Johns Hopkins showed that just 200 milligrams of caffeine, about what you'd find in a strong cup of coffee, administered after a learning task, helped participants retain information better for up to 24 hours. Imagine that, not before studying, but after. It's as if caffeine locks the memory in place, strengthening the brain's consolidation process. I often think of memory like a garden. Each experience is a seed. Some sprout quickly and fade, others take root and flourish. But for that to happen, the soil, your neural network, must be fertile, nourished, and irrigated. The coffee trick nourishes that soil by stimulating growth factors and increasing nutrient flow. And when paired with sleep, hydration, and purpose, it becomes a powerful tool for lifelong cognitive resilience. Maria, the teacher I told you about earlier, came back to me a year after her initial visit. She brought a small notebook filled with stories she'd started writing again, stories she had put away for years because she couldn't think clearly. She said, "I don't just remember better. I feel alive again." And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the essence of what we're talking about. Not just sharper recall, but the return of vitality, curiosity, and selfhood. The coffee trick isn't about chasing youth, it's about honoring the wisdom of your years while protecting the vessel that carries it. After 60, your brain doesn't need to slow down. It needs the right environment to thrive. And this is where lifestyle meets neuroscience. The most effective interventions for preserving memory aren't high-tech, they're ancient rituals reimagined through modern science. Coffee, consumed with mindfulness, timing, and nourishment, is one of them. Now, let's go a little deeper into the biochemistry of what happens next, because understanding the why gives us power. When you sip that cup of coffee, its molecules begin a remarkable journey. Within minutes, caffeine and polyphenols are absorbed through your small intestine and enter your bloodstream. They cross the blood-brain barrier, one of the most selective biological defenses in your body, and begin to interact with your neurons. Caffeine blocks adenosine receptors, which normally make you feel tired. This blocking effect doesn't just keep you awake, it increases the availability of dopamine and acetylcholine, two neurotransmitters vital for focus and memory. Meanwhile, the polyphenols in coffee, chlorogenic acid, caffeic acid, trigonelline, begin to neutralize free radicals, reducing oxidative stress in the brain's gray matter. Now imagine this effect happening daily, over weeks, months, and years. You are not just drinking coffee, you are sending your brain a consistent signal: stay active, stay alert, stay growing. And what happens when you do that? Your brain listens. It starts building new capillaries. It strengthens connections in the hippocampus. It improves the efficiency of your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that helps you plan, reason, and regulate emotions. In neuroscience, we call this neurovascular coupling, the intimate relationship between brain activity and blood flow. Every time a neuron fires, blood rushes in to feed it. After 60, that coupling can weaken, and the brain's ability to fuel itself diminishes. Coffee's compounds help restore this balance by enhancing nitric oxide production, which dilates blood vessels and keeps the flow steady. This is why older adults who maintain moderate coffee consumption often perform better on cognitive tasks, show slower rates of mental decline, and have healthier brain imaging patterns than those who abstain completely. But science alone doesn't make this real. It becomes real when we see its impact on lives. There was a gentleman named Farid, a retired engineer from Istanbul, who came to one of my lectures a few years ago. He told me he had given up coffee decades ago due to heartburn. But when he learned about the brain benefits, he tried something new: a smoother, low-acid, medium roast coffee brewed with a splash of oat milk. He followed the same timing rule after breakfast, never on an empty stomach. 6 months later, he wrote me an email that I'll never forget. He said, "I'm 73, and for the first time in years, I can read my engineering journals and actually remember what I've read." That's what this is about. The small victories that ripple through the quality of your life. The joy of remembering names, the comfort of a clear mind, the peace of waking up without that mental fog. Those moments are worth everything. Now, I want to share a deeper insight, one that may surprise you. The benefits of coffee on the brain aren't purely chemical, they're also behavioral and psychological. Think about the act of preparing coffee. It's a mindful ritual. The aroma, the warmth, the stillness before the day begins, these activate your parasympathetic nervous system, your rest and restore mode. You are teaching your body calm awareness. This calmness allows your prefrontal cortex, the seat of judgment and emotional regulation, to function optimally. So, coffee is not just a stimulant, it's also a rhythm, a cue for the mind to focus without fear, to awaken without panic. Some neuroscientists believe this daily ritual contributes to cognitive resilience by creating a consistent neurochemical pattern. The predictability soothes the nervous system, and when you add the biological effects, improved blood flow, increased BDNF, enhanced neurotransmitter activity, you create a synergy between body, mind, and behavior. There's also a remarkable link between coffee and longevity genes. In 2018, researchers studying centenarians, people who live to be 100 or more, found that moderate coffee drinkers often carried higher expression of the FOXO3 gene, which regulates cellular repair and stress resistance. In plain terms, coffee doesn't just wake you up, it tells your cells to defend themselves better. It teaches your biology to adapt, to recover, to endure. But let's be honest, what's the point of living longer if we can't remember the life we've lived? What good is time without clarity? That's why memory preservation after 60 is not just about avoiding disease, it's about sustaining meaning. Every memory you hold is a thread in the tapestry of your existence. When those threads begin to fray, your world can start to feel unfamiliar. And yet, science tells us this unraveling is not inevitable. The brain has an extraordinary ability to heal, even late in life. I've seen it in patients who started walking daily, learning new skills, or yes, simply bringing coffee back into their mornings with care and intention. I remember an elderly woman named Leela, 82 years old, who began attending my cognitive wellness group. She had lost her husband a few years earlier and said she felt mentally gray. She used to love painting but had stopped. When she joined the group, she started following a routine: a light breakfast, a cup of coffee with a splash of cinnamon, which, by the way, enhances insulin sensitivity and boosts circulation, and 20 minutes of sketching afterward. 6 months later, her artwork had transformed. She said, "My hands feel steady again. My mind feels young." And on her cognitive re-evaluation, she showed measurable improvement in visual memory. There's a lesson in her story. The goal isn't to chase youth, but to ignite engagement, to remind the brain that it still has purpose. The coffee trick is just a doorway to that. The real magic happens when chemistry meets curiosity, when habit meets hope. For those listening who may feel it's too late, it isn't. The brain is not a static organ, it's a living network that rewires itself until your last breath. Every cup, every thought, every choice you make sends a signal: grow or decay. And even after 60, even after 80, you can choose growth. You see, your brain responds not to your age, but to your activity. If you feed it with nutrients, oxygen, learning, love, and yes, the right kind of coffee, it will surprise you with its resilience. It will show you that wisdom doesn't have to come at the cost of clarity. There's a quiet beauty in that idea, that perhaps aging isn't a slow descent, but an ascent into awareness, gratitude, and grace. And with small intentional actions, we can climb higher still. So tomorrow morning, when you hold that cup in your hands, take a moment to pause, feel the warmth, breathe in the aroma. Let it remind you that your mind is still vibrant, still alive, still capable of wonder. That this moment, this sip, is a message to your neurons. Keep remembering, keep connecting, keep being me. And as you do, remember this simple truth: it's never too late to protect the story of your life. Because your memories are not just stored in your brain, they live in your heart, in your spirit, in every act of awareness. And as long as you keep feeding that awareness, with knowledge, with nourishment, with purpose, your light will never fade. So, drink that cup wisely, pair it with gratitude, honor the science, but also the soul behind it. You are not just keeping your memory alive, you are keeping yourself alive. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the real secret behind the coffee trick. Not a miracle in a mug, but a reminder that even the simplest habits can hold the power to protect who we are. So here's to the mornings ahead, clear, strong, and full of memory. May your cup never be empty, and may your mind always stay awake to the wonder of being alive. Ladies and gentlemen, before I leave you with this message, I want to take you behind the curtain of what's truly happening when we talk about memory after 60. Because beyond the headlines, beyond the quick health tips, there's a story. The story of your brain's extraordinary will to live. The story of a system that has spent decades gathering, shaping, and refining everything that makes you you, and is still fighting, even now, to hold on to it. The human brain is not fragile, it's fierce, it's adaptive. Even in its older years, it's learning. When neuroscientists look at brain scans of people in their 70s and 80s who remain sharp and mentally active, they often find something astonishing. Their brains are literally rewired differently. They build alternate neural highways when old roads are damaged. It's as if the mind says, if I can't go through, I'll find a way around. And here's what's fascinating. The signals that encourage those alternate pathways often come from chemical messengers triggered by small, daily habits. One of those messengers, adenosine, which caffeine temporarily blocks, acts like a fatigue flag in the brain. By gently modulating that system, not overdoing it, but finding balance, coffee helps the mind stay in motion. It's not the caffeine alone that matters, it's how that stimulation interacts with your circadian rhythm, your hormones, your brain's repair cycles. When you wake up, your cortisol, your natural alertness hormone, is already peaking. That's why the ideal time for that first cup of coffee isn't immediately upon rising, but roughly 90 minutes later when cortisol levels begin to drop. That's when caffeine harmonizes with your biology, giving you smooth, sustainable energy instead of a spike and crash. This timing supports focus, stabilizes your mood, and reduces the stress that silently damages neurons over time. Now let's step into the deeper chemistry. Coffee's polyphenols interact with your gut microbiome, the vast colony of bacteria living inside you, to produce metabolites that directly affect brain health. One of them, called ferulic acid, reduces neuroinflammation. Another, caffeic acid, acts as a shield for the hippocampus, reducing amyloid buildup, those toxic plaques that are linked to Alzheimer's. In essence, when you drink high-quality, freshly brewed coffee, not the sugary, artificial kind, you are performing a daily act of brain maintenance. You are cleaning the pathways that allow your memories to travel. And this becomes especially important after 60 because your body's natural antioxidant defense systems begin to weaken. Enzymes like catalase and superoxide dismutase, the molecules that neutralize free radicals, decline with age. But coffee, rich in these plant-based antioxidants, steps in to fill that gap. It's a bridge between what your body can no longer make in abundance and what it still desperately needs to protect itself. I often tell my patients, your morning coffee is not just a beverage. It's your first dose of brain defense. But remember, it's a partnership. Coffee can't do it alone. You must support it with hydration, with omega-3 fats, with sleep, with learning. When all those forces align, the effect is synergistic. One small ritual becomes a cascade of protection. I think often about a man named Arthur. He was 78 when I met him, a jazz musician from Chicago. His short-term memory was slipping. He could play songs from 50 years ago flawlessly, but couldn't remember what he had for breakfast. We adjusted his diet, added antioxidants, and introduced the coffee ritual, a mindful cup after a balanced meal, paired with his music practice. A year later, he sent me a recording. The message read, "My fingers remember faster now." He didn't say his mind was better. He said his fingers remembered. That's the beauty of neuroplasticity. It doesn't always announce itself with grand gestures. Sometimes it shows up in the small miracles. The way you tie your shoes, recall a name, hum a forgotten melody. And that's the ultimate gift of these discoveries. They remind us that we are never static. Even as the years pass, the brain remains a moving river. Every experience, every sound, every flavor keeps carving its banks. Coffee is just one of the pebbles that helps guide its flow, steadying the current, sharpening its sparkle. So, as we stand here together tonight, I want you to imagine this tomorrow morning. You wake up and the light spills across your kitchen. You pour that coffee slowly. You add nothing artificial, just warmth, aroma, and intention. You take your first sip and remind yourself, this is fuel for remembering. And as you drink, you smile because you understand what's really happening inside you. You're not just waking your body. You're tending to the most sacred archive you own, your mind. Let your coffee become an act of gratitude. Gratitude for the neurons that never stop working, for the memories that never stop shaping you, for the chance to feel alive in this exact moment. I'll leave you with this thought: memory is not something that lives behind you. It lives through you, in the way you speak, move, create, and love. And as long as you keep nurturing it, it will keep lighting your way forward. So drink that cup not in haste, but with reverence. Because hidden in that simple daily ritual is the possibility of something extraordinary. Not just a sharper memory, but a clearer connection to the essence of who you are. Thank you, and may every morning remind you that your best memories are still waiting to be made.